Welcome to sunny Los Angeles. The hell? This is not LA. It's supposed to be in LA right now. What the hell's going on? You guys can see, obviously, I'm not in LA. I'm at home in my garage with the car. I had to change plans. I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically, I'm not going to go to LA till after Christmas. But I will spend New Year's there. So it's right after Christmas I'll go, spend New Year's in LA, and then I won't come back until mid-January or something like that. So since we're here, I am going to do what I said I wasn't going to do till later. We're going to do it now. That's right. Everything in that box is going on that car. And I hope I didn't make you dizzy just now. It made me dizzy. So we're going to install the control arms. We're going to change the top mounts. We're going to put the H&R Lowering springs back on the car. One other thing I had to do, because my caps are getting deteriorated, the paint on the colored shields on the center caps is getting deteriorated. Some look really good. The one looks pretty bad. I could have got new ones, but I wanted to reinstall my BBS center caps that came with the car. I never installed them. They were brand new. Problem is, they're misplaced. We can't find them anywhere. So no big deal. I ordered new ones directly from BBS. They'll be here next week or maybe at the end of this week. So I'll reinstall those and we're gonna run the brand new BBS center caps on the BBS wheels. And I figured why not? This looks good. It does give it that OEM Plus look with the shields there, but these are BBS wheels. So let's put BBS center caps on them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the passenger side first, just so I can refresh my memory of how everything goes. Because the only difference between the passenger side and the driver's side is one thing, and that is a little vehicle level sensor. There's a little plastic arm basically, and it knows the height of your vehicle in the front. There's one on the front and one on the rear. The only one we're going to mess with is the one on the front because we're going to replace that control arm. The one on the rear, you don't even have to touch it. So the one on the front, I got to remember to disconnect that. So that's why I'm going to do the passenger side first, because passenger side does not have that. So I'm going to knock that side out, refresh my memory how to do this job, and then I'm going to jump to doing the front side. So let me do the passenger side off camera, and you'll see the car in the air, wheels off, and we're going to do the driver's side together. Oh, I got ahead of myself. I almost skipped a very important step. We need to measure the car before we lower it. Another thing to check, if you want to check your shocks before you even get to this point, you're wondering, are your shocks any good? I'm going to show you an easy way to check them. So an easy way to check the shock is push down on each corner. If you push down on the corner of the car, if the car doesn't move, your shock's pretty good. If your car just goes real spongy, then maybe you have a bad shock. So I'm going to grab a towel because I don't want to put marks on here. And watch this corner right here relative to the tire. It barely moves, and I'm pushing pretty hard. Only thing I'm doing is flexing the fender. So if I go to the back, same thing. So do that on all four corners. And I did already. This is the second time I'm doing it. And the car does not compress at all, which means your shocks are good. They're not blown. They can hold up the car's weight. The car weighs 3,000, with all-wheel drive, like 3,300 pounds. So I'll put on the screen what it is in kilos. So with 3,300 pounds, if the shock is blown, you should be able to compress it real easy. I've had a car with blown shocks. Trust me, when it's blown, you push and the whole car will mush down. Blown or worn out shocks. So I'm pretty confident that the shocks are fine. But also, 90-degree pick. This is really good for what I'm about to do next. Bam. So I usually measure everything in millimeters, and I still haven't bought a metric tape measure. I'm using a SAE standard tape measure, which sucks because then you always got to convert everything. So anyways, let's measure this thing. So we want to measure, I think I said this in the previous video, you want to measure from the edge of your axle to your fender, not to the ground. Because if your tire pressure is up or down, it's going to raise or lower the tire. But it's not going to change this gap, and it's not going to change the height of the fender to the center of this axle. That's always going to be the same no matter what the tire pressure is at, because that is set by your spring and your shock. So let's measure this real quick and try to get the most center measurement. And you're supposed to use the center of the axle, but I'm just going to use the lip of the wheel. So I'm going to use the exact same wheels. So this from here to here is 13.5 inches. Remember this? We'll check it at the end. Now let's go to the back. 14 in the back. So though the gap in the front looks bigger than the gap in the rear, it's an optical illusion. The gap actually, the rear of the car is actually higher than the front of the car by a little bit. We're gonna measure before and after. This should give me, now these springs were broken in, but I've also removed them a while ago, and they've been sitting in a box. So since they've been sitting in a box, not under load, they've probably re-expanded. Now I'm catching my breath and get to work. You can see I already got hot. My hat came off. This is coming off next because it got warm in here. Lights turned off. I'm gonna turn this lights back on. There we go. So one thing I didn't tell you, I broke this axle nut loose. See, it's hand tight now. I broke it loose while the car was on the ground before I jacked it because there's no way in hell I was gonna get it off in the air. It gets torqued to something like 430 foot-pounds. I forget the number. This torque wrench, oh, I take that back. I think it's 340 and this torque wrench does 430 or vice versa, one or the other. So I broke the torque loose by hand first, and then I used that to get it the rest of the way out where it has a little resistance. When I go to put it back together, same thing. I'm gonna run it down with the impact, and when I see it getting tight, I'm gonna stop. I'll pull out my torque wrench and I'll torque it plus the 180, whatever the manual says. You only have to do the one on the front. You don't have to do the one on the rear. You're supposed to replace those. The torque is so high, and I've marked them when I've taken them up before, they never move. They do not move. Now, in the future, if I have to ever take it off again, yes, I'll replace it. Today, we're not going to. Same thing with the brake bolts. So when I get to that point, you're supposed to replace the caliper bolts. I never replace them. I'm gonna completely remove the lower skid plate plastic thing that's underneath. Normally, you don't have to remove that. You just have to loosen it so that the lower control arm will flex down. Today, I'm gonna remove it completely because I'm gonna replace that lower control arm along with the tuning fork that goes at a 45-degree connecting to it. So since we're replacing both of those, I have to remove that. I have to disconnect the bolt in the subframe. I also have brand new hardware to replace those. So I have, those bolts are supposed to be one-time use, they're stretch bolts. So if you guys have seen the video where people pull this and push it out and pull the spring off, you can do that, but I've already fixed it with touch-up paint here. I chipped it once. That's just a reflection. But you can't, I don't remember where I did it, but I chipped the corner of this once doing that. I also accidentally pulled an axle out of the differential. So I am not gonna do that. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna push the axle, I'm gonna pop off the ball joint, the lower control arm, because I'm gonna replace those anyways. We're going to lower control arm, ball joint, tie rod end, probably the brake disc itself. I think I'm gonna take everything out of here that I can. One more thing. if you have bows, which I do, have to remove your subwoofer. It sits right there. I'm gonna link the video. I already did it, but I'm gonna insert the video right here, how to remove the subwoofer. So watch that, and when you finish watching that, we'll be on the driver's side, taking apart the struts on that side.
6.5 hours later.
I'm sandwiched in my car. Why am I sandwiched in my car? Because if you follow me on Instagram, you saw that I had the bolts on the stud on the shock mount, on the rear, were just spinning, and I could not get them to come off. Now, let me show you what I've done in the past. So in the past, I was able to stick a something under the head of this and pull it off. That's how I was able to get this one off. I could not do that with that one. I had to cut that one. So that was what the video was that you saw, all the sparks. And basically, it was, I'll show you what it looks like. Basically, the nut looks like this when it's sitting on there. Not that color. And I had to cut the nut from the base of it, which is a washer. And then once I got this off, this was sitting there like that. So I just cut across, and then that finally came out. So I'm doing the exact same thing with this one right now. If I actually cut a slot in the top and tried to hold it, but it's seized. So just holding this, I couldn't get enough grip to turn that. But if you can see underneath it, zoom in. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm just cutting away, and the goal is to cut that off. The downside is I'm putting a bunch of sparks and dirt and debris into here. This was not part of the DIY for removing your shocks. And I hope I've never ran into this before. This is the first for me. So hopefully this serves to help you guys. So if you look at the service manual, it tells you do not use an impact. Do not use an impact. And do not over torque. Do not over torque. This is probably a result from both of those things, because I was in a rush the last time I did this, and I absolutely used an impact. I used a low torque, but I used an impact anyways. And I torqued it to spec, but I probably over torqued it because I used the impact first. So it's my own fault. I can only be mad at myself. But if I didn't have any bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck. Seems to follow me around. All right, back to your regularly scheduled program. So, same hoodie, different day. This should normally take you a few hours. This is day 3. Day 1, I spent almost the entire day doing the front strut on the other side. Now, the front strut gave me no issues, but I forgot the order to do things, so it took me longer because I had things out of order. Also, I replaced the control arm. I replaced that lower control arm, and I replaced the tuning fork. So both of those got replaced, so that added extra time. But the front is completely done. The rear is also done now on this side, and we're going to do the other side together. But I ran into an issue with this one. Then when I went to go install and put the strut together, the new spring and shock together, I ran into another issue. See how tightly these are wound together? And then you got a little space here. So basically, when you put that strut compressor on there, you can only grab these coils. So what I did was I'll show you when I do this. I put the compressor on the lowest part here and then spun it in as high as I could get it here so I could have more space so I could compress this so I can get this all together. On the OEM coils, they're linear, they're easy to compress, they're shorter actually. When I take this, I'm gonna take this all apart. I'll show you the OEM coil when it's decompressed, just sitting on the ground, is shorter than the H&R coil. And that's just because the H&R coil is a progressive coil and is designed to compress more, even though it's taller when it's not under a compression load. And the factory coils, front and rear, barely have any torque on them whatsoever, or any preload on them whatsoever. With the H&R rears, you'll have a lot more preload. In the front, almost no preload. You'll torque it very easy. So I guess I could show you in the car. Let me show you in the car what it looks like now. All right, yeah, still got a little dust in here I need to clean up. I already vacuumed all this and cleaned a lot of dust. So here's everything reinstalled. I was very careful with this cable, but you never know, and I hope I didn't pinch this cable, because if I did, it means we need a new shock, and that will suck. But there's the new bolt installed, this time very delicately. There's my new strut mount. I did yesterday also remove this completely. ECU's under here, so I had to disconnect the ECU. There's something else, some other module in here, so I had to remove all that. I did nick this a little bit while I was cutting it. I didn't do any damage, but I cleaned it up and threw a little coat of black paint on it, so it actually looks like factory. You couldn't tell. If I didn't tell you, you probably couldn't tell. The only place you can tell is right here towards the back. Right here. You can see I didn't have a choice. I ground down part of that lip just a little bit so I can get to that back bolt. But that was unavoidable. So now we'll work on this side. Let me give you some tips for this side. So we're gonna start on the rear because it's easier. I started on the front. I usually always start on the front, but today we're gonna start on the rear, and I'm gonna show you the rear first, and then we're gonna go to the front. The front actually is, honestly, the front's not hard, it's just a lot more steps. The rear comes out super fast, super easy. The hardest part is compressing the new coil spring. Compressing the OEM spring is a piece of cake. A tip, something I learned yesterday the hard way, was loosen all your hardware for the rear, the upper hardware, while it's in the car. Get comfortable in here. I don't know if you guys can see, I'm straddling the hump facing backwards. So here's my connection to my Bose. It's not, just keep that out of the way. You don't need that. I've already disconnected my PASM cable. If you don't have PASM, you don't have to worry about that. And you can see I've already loosened the bolts, but it hasn't gone down at all. And it's not gonna go down until I disconnect it from the carrier. The other thing I need to loosen is that center bolt. I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna break the torque on it and just have it sitting here. Now we're just gonna pass our PASM cable through our special tool here. You can get the professional Schwaben, or you can get this one off Amazon. This is cheap on Amazon. Just be careful with your cable here. All right, don't pull it all the way off, because you don't want, when you pull the shock out of the car, you don't want the spring going boing and shooting off. Just pull it that much, leave a little thread on there so it's grabbing on. Now we're gonna go to the outside and we're gonna pull this off, and it's gonna come off super fast. First things you need to take off are these. This one is an 18 on this one, 16 on this one. There's one. All right, flip hands. Go to the other side. Both of those are off. These two, once you undo these two here and you pull the bolts out, this will just drop right down and the shock will come right out. But before I do that, let me get the jack over here and make sure I can get that bottom bolt out. So you have a coffin arm bolt right there. It looks hard to get to on video, but trust me, it's easy to get to. You can loosen this. You don't have to, but you're gonna get an alignment done anyways. So go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this to take the slack off of here. Before I loosen that, I'm gonna put the jack under here, support the weight, undo that, then I'll undo these two, pull these out, and then we can lower the jack and this whole thing will be loose and you can wiggle it by hand. There it goes. It's coming loose. You don't have to turn it all the way off, just get a couple turns. Once you break the torque on it, you just get a couple turns on it. See, that's loose enough. I can turn it easily. Loose enough, stop there. Don't go anymore. The jack is supporting the weight. Now we can try to pull these off here. Get it low. See how easy this one comes out? Always pull. So if you look at them, they're not at the same height. This one sits higher than this one. So pull this one out first. And all I did was give the jack about a pump, and I'm pulling this out by hand. No tools. That one's out. There we go. So as soon as I pulled it out, I don't know if you guys noticed, this moved down. That's why you want to have that jack there. So now I'll take the jack down slowly. Oh, hold on, before I do that, let me break that one loose as well. There we go, that's good, it's loose. Then this whole carrier will move easier with that loosened. So now we can lower the jack. Slowly. And you see the strut's already trying to come out. So with that loose, should be able to, see how we can move this thing around easily? So I should be able to pull that bolt out. Got the nut off? Nope, don't. I think I have to put the jack on here, put a little weight on this, pull this till it hits this control arm, then I can do what I'm doing now. So let me try that. There we go. No tension on it now. Means it's all the way out, all right. A little bit more, come on. Come on, got it. Now you can lower your jack. And the strut wants to come out. You can see the strut already came off. See how it's already out? With the strut already loose from the bottom, I gotta go up top real quick, take the nuts off the top, and then we can pull it right out. Ta-da! Pull it down, and up and out. One rear shock. Now the important thing is, remember, this tab here sits flush against here. That's the only important thing. This can be turned 180 degrees, doesn't make a difference. Put the spring however you want because it's flat on the bottom. The only thing you have to line up is a perch here. This has an angle to match the spring, but the top half of this looks like it's at an angle, but it's not, it's flat. Now we're gonna put this in the spring compressor, and you see the spring is linear, it's not progressive, OEM spring. So we're gonna take this off, and then I'm gonna put this spring next to the other one so you can see it side by side. I've already got this set up. So this spring compressor is not the best. Basically, the spring compressor is great. It's these pieces here, you wish they were thinner, but they work just the same. This, you can see, I can turn this by hand. It compresses very easily. So let me put this in time lapse and you'll see the spring compress. It does not need to go a lot to get this off on the OEM spring. On the H&R springs, different story. There, a couple turns. This is already loose. Pull the spring off. Careful of your PASM cable. All right, when you take this apart, this is the first time you've ever taken this apart, try to keep everything in order. So your nut, let me slide this over here so you guys can see the frame. So put your nut goes first. After your nut goes your top mount. Top mount right here, that's next. Now we're replacing the top mount, so we're gonna reuse this, but make sure you put it in order it came. So it went like that. So that one, then that. Then there's a little washer. It's the same on both sides. It doesn't matter which way it goes, but it goes under, not on top. So when you go to reinstall this, make sure the washer is on this side And you can see there's a countersunk inside there. And there's a flat side on this. So make sure this goes on the bottom side. So put it in order, then pull off your boot here, if it'll fit through here. If you got new ones, great. I don't, so I'll have to reuse these. Actually, let me take the compressor off and then I'll pull the boot out. So then, boot and bump stop. Spring. The short end of your spring to the bottom, the fatter end to the top. Same with the H&R springs. But the most important thing is to remember, put the boot on first, put the washer on next, put the top hat on, put your nut on. I have a new nut. Here's the H&R spring. Here's the OEM spring. As my friend Michael found out, aftermarket lowering springs, he went with Eibach, I went with H&R, but they are taller. They're noticeably taller, but they compress easier. I can push this down pretty easy and I can feel it. I can't push that down at all because this is a much harder, stiffer spring at that height. Now the spring rates are different. This is tighter as it closes and gets firmer. So now here's the challenge. Saw how easy it was to get the spring compressor on here. The spring compressor doesn't want to fit in between these coils. So it's a little bit of a fun game that I'm going to play right now. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. So get your boot in here first. The spring compressor is not going to let you get it in. This one. Got my spring compressor seated now. So you're not going to be able to compress much because of how tight these coils are. So get it seated. Give it a couple turns with this. There. Now we want to put a shock through. Pass your PASM cable. It's kind of tedious as hell though. Pass your PASM cable through your boot. PASM cable through there. Bring your shock through. Shock body, that is. It's gonna fit tight on the boot, that's fine. Push it, make sure this base is seated. But right here, I don't have enough threads. The coil is sitting higher than the threads, and it's on a compressor. So this is where we have to really compress it. So that's it, that's as far as I can compress this because these ends here are touching each other. But that should be enough to get, even if you don't have it all the way threaded down, I'm gonna show you a trick in the car. All right, remember the order? What goes on first? The little washer, spacer, whatever you wanna call it. It goes on and you'll see where it stops. Goes on and goes past the threads, stops right on the top of the shaft. That's gonna keep your shaft from going too far up. Then, so here's the old one, here's the new one. We gotta put the cap on. I made this mistake yesterday too. I didn't put the cap on first, so it popped that out. So put the cap on first. But before I do that, if you look on the shaft, there's a little indentation right there. That's where that tooth sits. So line up the tooth with that shaft first. Then you need to transfer this piece here, this plastic piece. I should have bought a new one. I bought the kit and I assumed this would come with it, but it didn't. Well, this isn't broken. This is rubber on here, and this is like a plastic phenolic, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna clean this up real quick and then we're gonna install it. The good thing about using a used part is you can see the indentions where the spring goes. So let's get this on here, line it up with the spring, which is right there. Spring is flush. All right, there we go. Next, you want to install your new cap. There's a little, remember the little tooth here. Make sure this cap is sitting flush down in here and get that tooth lined up. You can actually put your cap on here now if you want. That's a good idea. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll install this cap. The point of this cap is to keep this from getting popped out because it locks in on the bottom side. It's kind of surprising that it works that way because it's plastic. But the important thing is getting that tooth lined up. So this tab goes to the outside of your car and you want to line up the tooth. Now, if you line up the tooth and this tab's not to the outside of the car, you can rotate the shaft. It's not a big deal. So you can see now, see how this is sticking up? That's why you want to put this on first, because if this wasn't on here, it would have just pushed that bearing out and that tooth would not be sitting in the shaft and you have the potential of breaking it off. So I'm gonna sit this up against the spring. I'm gonna get a nut on here first so it doesn't come back off. So you notice I'm trying to turn this, the whole thing's turning. That's okay. I got a trick for that too. So to get that to not turn, take a pry bar and back up. You guys can see better. This is kind of why you need, if you have a second person, this is easy. If you're doing this on a table, it's easier, but I'm doing this on the ground. So take your pry bar, kind of wedge it in here however you can. Now this shouldn't turn, I think. Let's see, ratchet. Yep. And you can tighten this down. As you're tightening it, pay attention to here where the rubber's sitting on the spring because it moved. Readjust it. So the torque for this, I'll put it on the screen right here. I'm not gonna torque this down right now. I'm just gonna get it run down and then I'm gonna install it in the car and I'll torque it in the car. You could torque it here, but I ran into an issue yesterday when I was trying to torque it where it felt like it was gonna strip, so I stopped. And right now, there's not enough compression on the spring. So I don't think, the spring is loose, so you can move this. So I don't think I have it down far enough to torque it. So we're not gonna worry about torquing it right now. I've got it on there and threaded. That should be good enough. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna back this off and you should hold it in place. Right before I back it off though, I wanna look at the car. So I remember how this went onto the car. So these holes are gonna face front and back, and this tab is gonna face you. So line that up as well as you can, kind of like that. Then decompress the spring. So I backed it off just so that this spring is sitting against here, and don't put your finger in there in case it jumps. But I backed it off so the spring is sitting right against here. There's a little bit of tension on this now. So it's threaded on, it's not all the way seated. We can do this in the car. I'll show you the trick for that. The important thing is that you get it started. All right, let's back this off all the way. So this is what happened to me yesterday. So now I'm gonna have to take my rubber mallet and knock these off because they're stuck. Because the spring, you just don't have a lot of play with the spring. And you can see I barely got some threads on here. I got the nut on there, but it's not threaded a lot. But it's kind of how it has to be. So let me get a mallet and knock this off. Ta-da! All right, just drop it in here. Set it on there. Hasm cable up. Do not pinch it. Ask me how I know. Because I don't have a second person, I'll get it on there, right? How can I hold it up there while I go put the hardware in the top? That's where my buddy Jack comes in. Hey Jack, what's going on, bro? Jack's gonna help me today. All right, before you push up on the jack, make sure nothing's gonna get damaged. Make sure your threads are good. It's lined up with the hole. Less concerned with the bottom because you can reposition that. There it goes. More concerned with the top. We know why. All right, let's just get some threads started and then we'll worry about the rest. Started these by hand. These three are in just by hand, see? So zip them down. No torquing, just zipping them down right now. I'm using an electric ratchet just because it makes my life easy. Just run them down, don't torque them. All right, that one got tight, so I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to heat up that bolt and seize them. If you have any resistance, do this by hand. Don't use a power tool. I think that's what I did on the other side. This inboard one, you can see it didn't go down as far as the other ones, so I'm gonna do it by hand. This one is flush. It's not hot though, so that's good. This is just an electric ratchet. It's not an impact. Don't connect this yet because you still need to tighten that. If you can see, let me zoom in. The bolt, the shaft is already sticking up, right? That's how we're going to tighten it. But we're not going to do that yet. We're going to get the bolt in the bottom first. Then we're going to completely compress the spring. That'll push the shaft all the way up, and then you can tighten and torque that. So let's go back outside. Another thing, the bolts I removed, the 3 bolts I removed, they're all the same length. They're all the same size. They use the same nut. So you don't have to worry about mixing them up or which one went where. If you have new hardware, great. I ordered hardware, but they only sent me the hardware for the front. So unfortunately for the rear, I got to reuse the hardware. Yay. After you got the nut and bolt on there, don't tighten it. Just get it till it's pretty, so it's snug. Don't tighten it because you're going to tighten it at right height. Now it's to get these on. A trick I learned, we still got to go back and tighten those, but we'll do that last. A trick I learned with these yesterday was lift up the car. You have multiple places you can lift it up. The coffin arm, the tie rod end. The trick I learned was lift it right under the shock. And it'll lift the shock straight up and it'll help line these up. When I lift it from anywhere else, this whole thing rotates, won't let you line these up. Right now, they're not lined up at all. And you don't have enough strength to adjust it when it's up. So let's jack it up from the bottom of the shock point. That's why I had to get that bolt in there. Now we've done that, I'm going to now jack it up, compress the shock all the way so we can tighten up everything inside. Once we have everything inside tight and torqued, then we'll come back outside and we'll tighten and torque that stuff. So let's start with the inside because those torques are lower. So now we're going to compress the shock all the way. That's completely compressed. Now let's go inside the car and torque everything. And then we'll come back to outside and torque everything. So now inside the car, you can see with the spring completely compressed. See how high that one is off? So I'm gonna tighten these the rest of the way by hand. I used my electric ratchet, but I wanna make sure they're seated. I wanna also make sure that they're not binding. They should have some resistance. That's good, that's normal. Once I feel it flush and I feel the torque resist me more, I stop. Because then I'm going to pull out my torque wrench next. Like that one's already flush. I need to run this down. This one's nowhere near down. This is the other way where I was telling you how you can do this in the car. This is how. Because that shaft cannot go up anymore. So you can finish tightening this in the car and torque it. Because it has... because you have your torque wrench on the bottom holding pressure against it, or your jack holding pressure against the shock. It's not ideal, but it's what I got to do. These are 33 foot-pounds. This is 34 foot-pounds. You can see by the amount of turns I had that I was nowhere near the torque, which is good. So now it's getting tighter. There's one. Two. Three. It's good. One other little thing I did to help myself remember, what I did was I put a piece of tape on here and I put a mark on there. So when I put it back together, I lined it up exactly the way it was when it was working. So this is all done. We're done with the interior. Now we need to go to the outside and torque the outside. So we have to torque 3 places, here, here, and the bottom of the strut. We should also torque those inner control arms, but we're gonna get in alignment anyway, so don't, just German standard, good and tight is good enough. There's that one. Oh, 81 foot-pounds, 81 foot-pounds, 81 foot-pounds. This one and the forward one, just tighten those German standard, because you're gonna have to get those. That's where your alignments are. This is your toe alignment. This is your camber. Those are gonna get readjusted. This is all done. Reinstall your sway bar. I didn't show you that, but it's pretty easy. This loop goes over the top of this, goes into here. Let me turn on the light. So this end here, you have to counter hold. This is a 13 or 14, I can't remember. These are 13s. So it goes over the top here, comes in from the back side. These are 13s. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's one of the easiest things to remove and install. So I'm not even gonna show you this on the video because it's super easy to do. For the front, I cheated a little. Well, it's not cheating really. I broke the torque loose already on these. On the turbos and the all-wheel drives, you can't get this nut loose because it sits too far forward. It doesn't sit in the center like the rear does. On S cars, non-all-wheel drive cars, this sits a little bit further back. Now, I used to think that this was installed wrong, but I'm gonna put the mount up there when this is all out. I'll show you the new mount and show you there's only one way for this mount to go. So that is installed correctly. So these are already loose, they're ready to come out. Disconnect this cable here, which I already popped the cap on it. There we go. Need to loosen your lower control arm bolt, which is down there. I'm gonna show you an easy way to do that. Tie rod end, disconnect this. If I get my thumb on it, right back here. You can break the torque on that. Your tie rod end connection, you can either change it up here, or you can turn this, or you can do this one at the bottom. It doesn't matter which one you do. I'm gonna do the one at the bottom. One other thing you need to do, I just remembered because I actually forgot about it, was you need to disconnect this little arm right here. It's a 10 millimeter, get two 10 millimeters, disconnect this arm. This is your level sensor. If you don't disconnect this arm and you pull it and stretch it, your car won't know, this module won't know what level, if your front of your car is level or not. This is for your headlights and for your ride control. So disconnect this. You have one on the back and one on the front. The one on the back you don't have to disconnect. The one on the front you have to disconnect. But there's two 10 millimeter bolts on the back side of this. There's one. Broke the torque on that one. See if I can break the torque on this other one. Pop this cap off right here. All right. Pop that off, and then you pull these cables. Just give them a little wiggle. So that one. And here's the other one. There you go. That way you don't ruin your ABS. Now you can push this line off. This line is flexible, and then the rigid line attaches to the bottom. That's why you disconnect it. Usually, take a little hook and hang it on the shock. Problem is, I'm removing the shock, so that's not gonna work. Can't really get it in this hole. Don't wanna hang it off any of these cables. So actually right here, there's a hole in this bracket that works perfectly, and that's what I'm gonna use. And it's in a good spot too where I can hang the brake. On the passenger side, right here is the cover, the refueling line that goes from, you know, your fuel cap to your gas tank. You can pop that cover off and you can stick the hook in there. I tried to put it in here, it fell on me twice. I tried to put it somewhere else and it fell on me another time. I am lucky I didn't break a line, because from right here, where's my hand, to around the shock is a rigid line. And then it attaches to this flex line here. So I dropped it 3 times on the other side. It fell off the hook because I didn't have the hook in the right place. And I am very lucky I didn't break anything. So for you guys doing this at home, make sure it's secure. And I think that bracket with a hole in it is gonna be a good spot. Rigid lines right here. They're attached to that bracket. They're attached all here to the bracket, and that's why it's easier to pull that bracket off. Don't mess anything up. This is not lightweight. Let's pull this off. All right, let's get this in here. Bam, there we go. It's only pulling on this bracket. So if you still had this bracket right here attached, see how I moved? If you had this bracket attached higher up, it's putting stress on there that you don't need to do. So now that's off. Let's go to the other side, for the front here. And we want to pop off our ball joint here. So I've got my little popper tool here. I like using this because it's tapered in here, so you can reuse it and not mess up this boot. And this is loose. The reason I got that loose, so I can get access to that bolt back there and break that loose. Let me, there, get that dust cover loose so I can bend it out of the way. Now we're gonna loosen that 18 mil. My 18 here, I gotta break the torque on that. Yes, got that one loose. So that's loose. This is off. Now we can lower this more. It's still tied up top. One other thing I want to do, I'm going to take the brake disc off. You're going to ask yourself why. It'll make sense. It'll make more sense in the end. But let's get this brake disc off for now. This is going to be impossible to see, but behind the steering, behind this knuckle right here is the ball joint, and it's an 18. If you put 2 wobble sockets on here like this with an impact socket, you can get to it. So I need to break the torque on it first, which is this one. Actually, let me give me my bigger breaker here. That one. There we go. And then I can hit with an impact and it'll come off. All right, I remember why I didn't use the popper on the other side. Because I was changing the control arm, so I pulled out the control arm with all this one piece. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Don't wanna pop a CV axle out from the differential ever again. That was scary when that happened. There we go. So this is free. This is free. See, the axle is out. There we go. Now we can just release it from the top and this will drop straight down. Let's put our jack under here so it doesn't just drop to the ground. We'll start with this one. Now this will make sense why I removed the damn brake. You see now why I moved the brake? So I can hold this with one hand because it's going to be heavy. Control arm is stuck on there. We'll pop it off now that it's easy to pop off. We'll pop it off and we'll put the new one on. And I don't care if I mess this up because I got a brand new one. Oop, wrong way. Now, this is the piece you have to transfer over. So if you squeeze the corners and push the pin in, you can just pop this off and put it on the new one. For now, we're just gonna leave it there. Let's work on the shock. Get this off. 16 and 18. And then just move your shock from the carrier. There we go. Quack. So the only reason I removed the brake rotor here was because it's heavy and I knew I was going to take the whole steering knuckle and out of the car. It's the only reason I removed it. It made it easier, lighter to take that out of the car. The only reason I removed all of that and not just the shock is because I'm also changing control arms, which I still don't have to remove them to change the control arms. You can leave them in, you can leave it in the car. You can actually leave the shock in the car. So that's another way I could have done this is just change the shock, bolt everything up, and then do the control arms. But then it's like I'm doing two jobs. So I'm just doing this all together. If you guys just want to see the rest of the shock, fast forward. Right now, I'm going to take out the tuning fork arm. I'm going to take that out. So the bolts are already pre-loosened. I just got to pull one bolt out, and then I just got to wedge it out with a pry bar, and that's it. So, all right, so there's a 16 and an 18 down here. The 16 you just back off and leave it there. The 18 you got to remove. And I got a brand new 18. These are stretch bolts. You're not supposed to reuse them. So I got a brand new 18 to put back in there. And you can remember which one this is because this one has a point on it. None of the other ones do. So bracket right there above the sway bar. And this is the end of that tuning fork. You got to bend this bracket up just a little bit. Just gently though. I want to break it. And then you just pry, and then you use your pry bar and just pull this out. So let's see if I can do that. There we go. It's coming. Got it. There we go. Easy. All right, so I transferred over the duct on for the control arm. There's a little, if you guys can see, there's a little tab right there. And it has, on the control arm, it's got the gap where that tab sits. All the tabs need to sit in between the control arms. And then you just relock these. And this is your opening, and it splits open like that so you can pass through for your tie rod connection. Make sure when you pass it back through, this piece here is behind this dust shield here. That way that when the air comes in here from the front of the car, it comes from the front, hits this, and actually cools your brake. There we go. Oh, slid right in. All right, new bolt. Don't use the old bolt. New bolt. So here's the old control arm. And here's the new control arm. So the piece we need to transfer over is this piece here. So it's you guys can see it's a little circle, right? Well, it pops out from this side. So I'm gonna put a screwdriver on the edges that lock it and push it down gently and get it to pop out the other side. Then I can just transfer the other side, transfer to the new one and lock it in place. Let's do this. There we go. Actually, it's even easier than I thought. I just put the pointy end screwdriver on there and just gave it a few taps and it popped right out. Now it's missing one tab, it's supposed to have 4, but I think it'll lock in place. So this goes, goes like that, yep. Just there, and it's locked in. It's locked in, and that's what these little arrows are for. It's locked in place. Easy. Now let's just slide this one in place. Time to compress the shock. Yep, it's already loose. That's all it took to get the OEM spring off. So then I'm just going to break the torque on this. Go. Got it. And then let me compress this again. Right now it's not compressed. Just a little bit. Right. So like the back, remember the order the things come off. So you've got a top washer right here. Slide this down. This top washer's got the little tooth you need to lock in your shaft. So it's nut, top washer, your mount, your bearing, rubber cup. We're gonna reuse this only. I have a new piece of this, a new bearing, and a new top mount. Then you can pull your spring off. I have new bump stops, so I'm gonna replace the bump stops on here. But if you weren't going to replace your bump stops, you can leave this as is to put the new spring on. So we're going to pull this washer off. This one goes on the bottom, facing down. This spacer, just like the one on the back. So you see the order this goes in. And then your bump stop and dust boot go on. So OEM spring and H&R spring, you guys can't see them from that angle, but they are about the same height. The difference is, look how easy I can squeeze that down. And this one is a lot harder, just like the rear. So when you compress this, it's gonna get shorter faster. So your whole strut will be shorter. So let me go get my new mount, and we're gonna transfer things one for one. So new mount and new hardware for the mount and a brand new bearing. Now, this is Porsche OEM. And it has the 997 part number and everything on it. This one is not Porsche OEM. The bottom of this is taking a beating. It's not broken. The center is good, it's a little corroded, but the edges are fine. It's not broken in any way that I could see. But other than being a copy of the OEM one, it's not OEM. But this one says left. It has arrows just like the factory one. So here it has an L here. It's gonna be impossible for you guys to see. There's an L here and there's an arrow here. This arrow means forward, so I need to install it like this. You can't install this wrong, and I'm gonna show you that right now. You see the L right there? Hard to see, I know. See the arrow? The arrow faces the outside. So if you look in here, this can only go one way. It can only go like so, right? If you try to install this the wrong way, let's rotate it here. So we get that one started. The holes do not line up. They look like they will, but look, you cannot get, I mean, I guess you could force it if you wanted to, but the holes don't line up. So let's rotate it again. You see the holes? They don't line up. You can't install this wrong. Where's my arrow? It's right there. That's the only way it's gonna go in. You cannot install this wrong. So if you ever think, did I install this wrong? You can't. This is the only way it goes in. We left everything in order. The one thing is that you're gonna take off of here. Let me go to Scotch-Brite plant. I'm gonna pop this greasy, nasty bearing off, and I'm gonna put the new one in, but I wanna clean the inside of that first. So I'm gonna pop this nasty bearing off. Should just pop right out, because we're gonna reuse the cup, but not the bearing. Maybe it'll pop out. There it goes. All right, throw that away. This one's actually cleaner than the other side. So I'm gonna take blue Scotch-Brite. This is really soft Scotch-Brite. It's not gonna hurt anything. Just clean up the inside. If you've got some alcohol or something to clean this, that's even better. Put a little grease in there. It cleans up real easy, real fast. Actually, the grease that's in there smells kind of like gasoline or diesel. Just clean this up a little bit. You don't want to install new parts, install dirty parts with the new parts. And it cleans real easy, and this does not hurt it. It's not very abrasive, soft. You actually use this to clean your hands if you wanted to. A little soap on there, cleans your hands right up. There you go, like new. All right, so install that. Pop this out. So I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I want this bearing side facing up instead of this base, because this turns. See it turning? And this mates against that. See, the base is wider than the mount, but this is the exact same size as a mount, and it will turn smoothly. That's my theory on it. So when I'm installing this, install it like so, press it in, snaps in place. Here's our little cup. The cup is gonna go on top of the spring. So let's not get out of order here. Oh, boot. Let's leave that there for now. Let's get our new bump stop. We'll pop this one in here. Had it in and then I popped it out. There we go. Fits perfect. All right, so let's install this first. There we go. See how bump stop was really nice and tight on this shaft? That's normal, it's brand new. Here's your washer. It has a flat side and a countersunk side. You want the countersunk side down towards the shaft so it sits on this countersunk edge right here. We've already got the washer on there. We'll put this on. There's no tooth on this one. This is the bottom one. It's perfectly circular. There's no tooth on it. Put that one facing down. Okay. Then we want to put our spring on. The front spring only goes in one way. You can't really put it in the wrong way. So it only sits in that base like that. If it's not perfectly in that base like that, it's not in right. The only thing you have to remember is when you install this, when you install the top mount, is that this tab here faces the inside. Let me show you this too. If you ever wonder why your strut mount stops when you slide it into the carrier, it's because of this. So be careful with this. Don't break it. Don't bend it. That's what stops the strut. It's supposed to sit all the way down in there, and then the pinch bolt holds it in place. So, see that? So this goes to the inside. So if you're installing that towards the inside, make sure you're installing the mount with the arrow to the outside. Let's put the spring in the compressor first before we put it on here. That sits there. Look at the impression of the top of the mount. So I'll put that on next. Okay, like that. Then your bearing will sit on here like so. Bearing sits inside. The lip of this goes inside the spring. So this will go on here. Right now it's kind of crooked because it's hard to, I'll use my foot to stabilize it. There we go. And as you're doing this, continue to check, make sure everything still lines up, because things move around, especially when it's not under load. It's also dangerous because it's under load. So bearing next. So where's my little tab? My tab's here. So the arrow needs to be opposite. My arrow's here, so bearing needs to go this way. Opposite of the tab. So slide this through here. And, yeah. See this right here? Let me zoom in. The bottom of this mount, this cushioning, sits on this washer. So if you do this right, it'll sit perfect, and that adds an extra layer of cushioning. It's okay for this to spin. You don't have it locked down yet. This is the important piece. Make sure that tooth lines up with that shaft. Just find it on here. It's right there. Okay. Arrow. Get my nut. So let me just show you something. So you see, I got this compressed really as far as it'll go, right? This is as far down as it goes. And look at the nut. So what I can do is I can decompress this a little bit, and it'll make everything line up. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. All right, so I backed it off. A little tension, opened it up so there's some tension on here. See if I can get this to go tighter. So I'm gonna hit it once and watch this washer. Hopefully it doesn't move. Okay. Nope, it's trying to move. So when it turns, that means the shaft is turning. Well, I didn't want to do this, but hell, let's send it. I'm gonna hit this with the impact. If I can get it to go down just a few little a few threads, then I'll be happy. So it works really good with the impact. I really hate doing stuff like that and using an impact. The other side, I was able to get the torque, no problem. This side was just a pain. I also stopped where I see the threads sticking through and it looks appropriate. So the good thing is these shocks are not brand new. So if they were brand new, I'd be more concerned, but they're not brand new. They have about 30,000 miles on them. So to hell with it, we're just gonna send it. Next, we wanna get the CV axle into the carrier. All right, so these were hand tight and they were just temporary anyways. I'm gonna pull these off. These are the old ones. I'm gonna install brand new ones. Back in. We can run this to here. The only thing we need to do is we'll readjust this slot later. We can do it when the wheels are on the ground actually. But when I lower the jack, we can adjust this and move this so it lines up, because right now it's way off. But let's go back underneath and let's torque everything down there. All right, this video is going way too long anyways. So basically I need to torque this. I need to torque this one. I need to torque that bolt there. And I need to torque that there. I also need to torque these under here. So I'll do those off camera. And then I'll come back and tell you what the torques are, and we'll come back when we're putting the brakes back on. Completely honest with you, I'm kind of in disbelief that this is done. The only thing left is to put the under tray, see it's hanging down, the under tray and the wheels on the car. Need to install the carpet and the Bose sound woofer, but I could do that myself off camera. Normally very organized, but I'm just been so exhausted, so tired. I'm just powering through to get this done. So let me get this back together, then you'll see the wheels going on the car next.
The next day.
I finished everything last night with the exception of final torques on a few things and putting the wheels on. My wife came and stopped me last night. She said, look, you're done, you're exhausted. And honestly, I was out of gas. The last couple of days have been challenging. I've done this suspension work on this car 3 or 4 times. This is probably the 4th or 5th time now. I can't even remember how many times I've done this. And it was always pretty straightforward. This is the only time it's been kind of challenging. This is not normal. Like I said, I've done this multiple times, and normally it goes smoothly. These cars are very modular. They're easy to work on. Do not get intimidated by this. This is a rare one-off thing that just happened. So I was extra careful installing things to make sure I install them the right way, with the exception of the driver's side front strut. I had no choice but to use an impact on the top. On that top nut, I couldn't get it to torque because it just kept spinning the shaft. So with the exception of that, everything else is installed the right way. So now, how low is it? Well, let's lower it and then we'll measure it. Okay, I'll tell you what it is now. Remember, we're going to measure from the top of this hub right here to the fender. Okay, so we can read the number better. 12 7/8 on the front and 13 3/4 on the back. 12 7/8 on the front, 13 3/4 on the back. I love the way it sits now. That sits so nice. So I'm not 100% done. I still need to put the Bose subwoofer. Oh, I need to clean the shelf and put the Bose subwoofer back in there. I need to clean all the windows on the inside and everything. The inside is just dirty. Almost done, 99.9% done, but at least the car is back on its own way and it's off the quick check. I keep looking back at the car wondering if it's gonna settle. I can tell you the rear, I measured it right before I turned the camera on. I measured it, and since I measured it, it went down just a little bit more. So it's gonna settle. So the numbers that I showed you earlier are not the final numbers. It will go down a little bit more under its own weight. Tomorrow we're going to the alignment job. The only thing I did not torque was the camber and toe adjustment on the rear, and that's it. Actually, I torqued everything on the front, but the camber and torque adjustment on the rear, I did not torque because the alignment shop's gonna have to redo that anyways. I tightened it, I mean, as tight as I could by hand. I just didn't pull out a torque wrench and torque it. I did tighten the living crap out of it, but just not with the torque wrench. And the front, I did actually use a torque wrench because I don't want the struts, because it's slotted, I don't want the camber to be moving around. So I torqued those so they don't move. The rear, if it's not torqued and it moves a little, it's not a big deal. Just drive carefully. Y'all heard of Murphy's Law? You're not gonna believe this. Car is looking pretty. Got brand new, this is what I was waiting on. Brand new BBS center caps. Brand new from Germany. And I haven't even pulled the plastic off on it. I went to turn the car on, dead, completely dead. I knew the battery was dead the other day, so I plugged in my brand new little jump pack supposed to start anything. Nothing, no signals. What the hell? So I plugged in the old heavy big body DeWalt that weighs 1,000 pounds, and I got power, still not enough to charge the battery. I checked the voltage of the battery on the car, 2 volts. So it is so dead, it's probably messed up internally, won't even charge. On the plus side, the battery's 8 years old. Surprised it lasted this long, but damn. But the car looks good. It looks good. Bose is in, the Bose thing's in. I cleaned the inside, cleaned all the windows. Car's all put back together 100%. Just can't even turn it on. So now I gotta go take out that big heavy ass 100-pound battery and go buy a new one. Merry Christmas. So I'm leaving the auto parts store in the reliable old family truckster, aka the Volkswagen Passat wagon. It has a check engine light. It's got some blemishes, but it never lets me down. Keeps on rolling. So we're driving the wheels off this thing till it dies. Hopefully no time soon. So Merry Christmas to my Porsche. It just got a brand new battery for Christmas. Now let's go home and install it. We're done, and the car is back in its original spot. We had couple surprises. My initial plan for this was replace the upper strut mounts, the front ones, because they were aftermarket, they were not Porsche OEM, and I thought they were bad. And also, I did have more play than I was comfortable with on the lower control arms. Now, they were still fine, they were acceptable within limits, whatever you want to call it, but I wanted to replace them. With FCP Euro, you have lifetime warranty on any part you buy as long as you own the car. On the right side, we had the shock mount that was just spinning studs, and I couldn't get the damn thing out, and I had to cut. And it took a lot of time and effort of cutting it to get it done. The driver's side rear shock, smooth, easy, no issues. Front strut on the driver's side came out relatively easy, went back together pretty easy, except I couldn't really get it to torque, and unfortunately I had to use the impact. That was the only thing I didn't like, but everything else torqued to spec. Even the other side I got the torque to spec. The car should ride relatively smoother in the front anyways, and we also took advantage, as I was taking things apart, to reinstall our H&R Lowering springs, and I think the stance is phenomenal. It looks beautiful. There's still just a little gap, which is good, because that means the car has room to go up and down. I don't want it so rigid that it doesn't move. This took me way longer than it's taken me in the past. It was a lot more complicated than it was in the past. This is not normal. If you're going to change your shocks and struts on your car, this is a one-day job. And especially if you have a friend. And if you don't have a friend, get a friend, find a friend, phone a friend. If you're close, I'll come help you. But this is not normal. This is the first time also that I've done this 100% by myself. I had zero help from anybody.
The next day.
Good morning. I'm supposed to be at the shop right now. I am running a little bit behind schedule, but it's not far, so I'll be there shortly. I will tell you one improvement I already noticed. Well, two things. One, I'm not clunking when I come off a speed bump. Before, as soon as I come off a speed bump, I go clunk, 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 like almost like a little rattle. It's not doing that, which is wonderful. The other part is that the steering wheel, even though it's off, right now it's like super off. It's nowhere near centered, but we're gonna get alignment. The other part is it returns to center very easily. Well, it doesn't look center, but like when you let go of the wheel or after a turn, it turns right back really quick. It wasn't doing that before, and the bearings that were under the strut mounts that I took off were pretty stiff. I think that was from that time that I rode through the salt flats. I'm going a little bit faster now, but I can't go too fast because PSM failure. That's weird. I just got a traction control failure. Oh, I know why I got that. It's probably because the tires keep slipping and spinning because they're not pointing the same direction. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. So the car's dropped off. I'm walking to Moto Corsa, the Ducati dealer. I'm gonna pick up a new headliner for my helmet that I ordered. And funny thing is, as I was getting there, I had the traction light turn on and it said PSM not available. I thought it was odd. I checked the PASM. PASM works, which good, because that's the hardest part. It's changing those shocks if PASM has failed, because there's no fixing it. It just said PSM. So then after I parked the car, I scanned it and it said that I had a steering angle sensor not initiated. So I think when I moved the steering wheel on that spline, either I didn't reconnect the main connector or I didn't connect it all the way. But no big deal. When I get home, we'll pop the airbag out and look at it again, make sure everything's connected, make sure I don't have a bent pin or something, and hopefully that's all that's wrong with it. So I was checking out the Ducatis. I was going to talk to my buddy Todd, and then I had to beat feet because I got called from the alignment place that they can't do the alignment because the car's too low, which kind of surprised me because they have done the alignment before, more than once, and the car was exactly that height before. So I'm kind of surprised. I mean, the car didn't even go down an inch. It went less than an inch down. So I told them, well, use a 2x4 because that's 2 inches. You should be able to get on the ramp. I'm going to go find out. So found the issue was that the place I usually take the alignment got a brand new rack, and their new rack is higher. Well, not brand new, but it's newer than the last time I came. And the new rack is substantially higher. I went and looked at it, and it is substantially higher than the previous rack. I don't understand why they did that, because that's going to really limit what you can drive onto it. I mean, I was looking at it, how high it was, and I was kind of shocked at the ramps that they had. I don't know if they got it cheap or they got a discount or what, but it looks like you can't even put a regular sedan on that rack without damaging it. It's pretty high. I'm kind of baffled. But they sent me to another place, same chain, but a different place It told me who to ask for at the front desk and who's going to do the alignment. And it's a drive-on pit style, so I don't have to worry about the rack. And that's where we're going. The car is freaking out with the... I cleared the fault. I scanned it, and the fault is the steering angle. I cleared it, but the car is freaking out because the steering wheel is turned like at 45 degrees to get the car to go straight. So the traction control is freaking out a little bit. I think that's all that's going on. I think once I get the alignment and I rescan it and clear the fault, it'll probably be fine. But just to double check when I get home, we'll pop off the airbag and look at that as well. As far as the suspension goes, it actually rides nice. It's very, to be honest with you, it's very compliant, it's very comfortable. I'm pleasantly surprised. And I've been on some really rough roads already, because downtown usually has some pretty rough roads. Actually, it's really compliant and feels nice. On the freeway, it feels very comfortable. So maybe, yeah, it might have been that those front lower control arms were bad, because right now it's riding very comfortable, very compliant. I'm happy with it. So let's get this damn thing aligned, so then we can go take some pictures and really drive it hard like we want to, and then see how it feels.
Fly me out to Paris, I'm the baddest. I just want the money I can manage. Bust me down, I want a ring with the carrots. They know I'm the one, that's why they staring. Fly me out to London or some thongs. I don't want your man unless he know to put his thumb in. Apple bottom jeans looking dumpy. They just told the DJ run it back, I ain't no one hit. High class, so I come with a price tag. Yeah, sweetie music, but she running up a dumb bag. Pretty girls get it, try to beat with a drum.
So it's been a couple days, and I wanted to go back and remeasure it, but I also wanted to tell you my experience with the car for the last few days. So before I measure it, let me tell you my experience with it. First of all, very, very, very comfortable. More comfortable than I remember. Now, I have got new shocks since I had these springs on the last time, so that has a lot to do with it. The car is very compliant, super comfortable. A lot of that has to do with H&R's style of having a progressive rate. A progressive rate spring can adapt to various road conditions because of its design, where a linear spring is going to give you the same spring rate top to bottom the entire time. I think that's the main reason why this car rides more comfortably now than it did on the stock springs. The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to eliminate that little bit of a rattle I had when I go over speed bumps, almost like a crashing feeling. It's hard to explain, but I could feel something kind of fluttering or jumping when I'd go over a speed bump or a little bump in the road or something like that, and it was beyond annoying. I knew something wasn't right. So we addressed that by installing OEM Porsche upper strut mounts and the lower control arm. Now, I don't know which one fixed it, but it is fixed. The car does not do that anymore. It rides very nicely. It's very comfortable. Steering, also, when you turn the wheel and bring it back, it comes back very nice and smooth and sharp. It's not stiff anymore. So I am super happy that I did this. I love the way the car is sitting right now. But right now, I absolutely am surprised and shocked at how well these H&R springs run with 2-year-old shocks and struts instead of 14-year-old shocks and struts. Let's take a quick measurement. Let's start with the front. So the front is now 12 3/8. Don't worry about remembering these numbers because I'm going to put it all on the screen. 12 3/8 on the front. 12 3/4 on the back. So 12 3/8, 12 3/4. That's where it's sitting now. Compare that to previous. It's on the screen right here, probably across the bottom. That's how much lower the car is sitting. That's probably going to be the final height. It's probably not going to go any lower than that. Now remember, this car is PASM, so it's already 10 millimeters lower than base model 911. For now, we're not going to do anything else with the car. Through this process, we had a couple unplanned surprises, which made this video so much longer. But in the past, I've done a really crappy job of giving you a DIY video. So I wanted to give you a better step-by-step quality DIY video. Completely did not anticipate the issues we had, but I'm kind of glad they did. In hindsight, I'm glad they did come up because I was able to resolve them. I've gone through the car. I've checked everything. There's nothing else to do with the car. The car is ready for the road trip. The next trip we're going on is next week. The next trip we're going on will be to LA. We're going back to Cali. We're taking the car, and we're gonna take 2 of the little furry dogs with us. I'm not gonna tell you which 2, you're just gonna have to wait till the next video to see which ones. We're gonna go to some places I've already been to in the past, and we're gonna go to some new places. If you stayed through the video this long, thank you so much. This was a much longer video than I planned it to be. Thank you to all the supporters, anyone who's been watching this channel for a little while, and my new subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. Let's keep this growing. I have more stuff planned for the car. I have more trips planned, and we don't plan on getting rid of this car anytime soon. There's so much more we can do to it. Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Feliz Navidad. We'll see you later. Next video will be 2025, driving to Cali, road trip.